Hi, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to a Friday live stream. I've got to say, I was just looking at the opening credits there, and I just noticed that essentially everyone who doesn't comply is in that feeder into the show, basically, because what a group of people we are. We all kind of came together back in 2020. We didn't comply, we didn't follow what they told us, and here we all are still. So I just noticed that. So first of all, a warm welcome. Hi, John Saunderson. Hi, Chris Davies. Good to see you. Hoping to be joined by Mr. Gregory Paul Martin, who is currently in the States. So we're hoping he'll be with us very shortly. However, before we get to that, aloha, Donny girl, my long lost Hawaiian friend. Aloha to you. Good to see you. Yeah, it's good to see you all folks on this Friday evening. And actually, to be honest, given the certain event that happened in New York City yesterday, I'm going to talk about that anyway. So I want to chat about that. But several sort of announcement-y things I want to get through with you first. First thing to tell you is that we will be announcing the full details of our live event in London on July 26th, Monday night, 8 p.m., 100% guaranteed. As I say, we had planned to do it the other night, but there was a bereavement in the family of those organizing it. So I'm sure you'll understand why, out of respect, I wanted to put it back. But it will be announced on Monday night. Now, I'm going to tease you a little bit about Chris Davies, we're going to get to the Banana Republic. We're going to get to that. But suffice to say that when it comes to this live event, it's an absolute cracker. So we've got a very, very famous sportsman, who you'll all know. He's going to be part of it. And we've got another very, very well-known person, a political person, and again, you'll all instantly know who it is. So it's going to be a cracker of an evening. It's going to be at a new format, in a new venue. All of that stuff will become apparent early on next week. So do make sure if you put that date in your diary, come along. And talking of London, I can confirm it's not Marcus Rashford, my bestie, who was one of. Do you remember my little incident with Marcus back in September of 2020 that got me taken off the twatters? Remember that? Because I just asked a perfectly innocent question. You're not allowed to do that apparently when it comes to Marcus, but it's not him. It's someone else. The other thing I wanted to say is that tomorrow there is a great gathering happening in London of patriots. And I know Tommy Robinson is going to be at it, Lawrence Fox. A lot of friends of mine are going to be there. My good friends Stan and Dan from Voice of Wales are going to be there. It's going to be the bestest people. And it's a demonstration, basically talking about the problems we have in London, our capital city, around the performance of the Metropolitan Police. So I think it's going to be really good. I would be there, but I live in a different island, as you know. I'm offshore. Probably Keir Starmer is going to be coming for me, one of these offshore people. But yes, all the Hearts of Oak gang are going. Good to see that, Chris Davies. And in fact, I mean, you're going to be amongst the bestest people, who, of course, are being mischaracterized as extreme. Yes, I'm in a tax haven, Chad. Yeah, it's going to be a great day. And if you jump over onto, or if someone can even bring the details up here, we'll share that to help Tommy and everybody out. But as I say, were it not for my distance, I would be there. And well, I think I think my credentials in this are pretty clear. I don't feel that I have to apologize, but I wish I was there. So many times I think, God, I live in the wrong country. In fact, I really live in the wrong country, because I know I talk to you guys about British politics and American politics. I don't often get into Northern Ireland politics because they're so awful. It's so absolute cringe and grim. And all I can do is kind of laugh at them a little bit, but it's still not that great because I'm living amongst them, So yeah, here we go. March with us. Watch the premiere of Tommy's movie Lawfare tomorrow in London, 1st of June, flaming June. Do make sure, stand up against two-tier policing, which of course is manifest in London, but other cities as well, as Tommy knows. But as I say, I want to offer best support to the guys and gals who are going to be there. And I know so many of you. I have been speaking to lots of people. Yes, Chris Davies says Labour's coming after you, non-doms. Yeah, they're going to crack down on me. So they probably are, actually, to be fair, and all of us. But here we see people actually just looking there at the stream. Maybe lots of people endorsing it. There's my friend Katie Hopkins endorsing it. We have, I know, I think the Lotus Eaters have endorsed it. Yeah, basically all the right people. There we go. The guys from Voice of Wales are there. So lots of good folks going to be there. If you go along, you'll have a great day out. Obviously, needs to be kept peaceful, but by the same token, it's all about reclaiming our capital city and getting rid of two-tier policing. It's not acceptable. Okay, so that is that side of things. The other thing I wanted to talk about, in the expectation that Greg will actually join, is I wanted to talk about the Trump verdict that happened last night. Actually, I've been doing a live stream on my podcast channel, and we talked a lot about this. And lo and behold, about an hour and a half after we finished, the verdict was in. Guilty on all counts. The most guiltiest guilt of all, apparently. And he's a felon. Donald Trump is a felon. So the left tell us. And there, as you can, I'm sure if you've read any of the British headlines tonight, it's so embarrassing. You know, they're going, the mainstream media is doing what they always do. They hate Donald Trump. And I'm being asked the question, will they put him in jail? Yes, Chris Davies. I'm convinced when the sentence is passed, which will be July the 11th, by the cringe, corrupt justice, I think they will get him in jail. I think they want him in jail. And yeah, John Saunderson, I mean, there's more convictions against. It's true, this, folks. Don't check it out if you don't believe us. There's more Donald Trump has had more convictions than Al Capone. And that is because we've got a bunch of gangsters in the American government, and they are using lawfare to silence their political opponent, which is so sad, but that's where we are with the Democrats. You know, I did put out an extra, to be fair, first thing this morning, I put out a 30-minute extra long podcast special on the Trump verdict and what this all means. And yes, indeed, his website crashed with all the donations. I understand that Donald Trump received about, was it $35 million in donations last night. Yeah, if you haven't listened to that, you should check that one there out, actually, because what I did in that one was I gathered together responses from all kinds of different people, and you can check it out over on the website as well. Don't forget to check out the website and the podcast channel as well. You can do all those things if you want to get my content. Donny Girl says, these are a bunch of Marxists running our main institutions. They are indeed the most awful people. I mean, they've absolutely demolished the rule of law in the United States. I mean, what people have been saying, that the US has become a banana republic overnight. I think that's a bit harsh on banana republics. I think it's even worse than that, because I do believe that the Biden regime is wicked to the core. And I don't know if any of you saw this. I did stick it up on my Twitter, I think, earlier, but Joe Biden gave a small, 30-second press conference, something like that. And they asked him, during the press conference, what about this? And he just kind of stumbles, as you know, the way he stumbles, because he's demented. He stumbles off the stage, but he looks around and he just smiles. He just smiles because he knows, and they know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Donald Trump in prison. And once they get him in prison, stuff can happen. I believe. I was pleased to see that. Yeah, I've got that's it in the background. I don't know if we can bring it up, actually. Here we go. There's Joe just striding off. What do you see? Here he goes. Look, stumble. Look at that dynamic man. Look at that. He can hardly walk. and boom, and yeah. Anyway, he turns around and he just grins. He doesn't say anything. He's so happy. He is evil. The regime is evil, and I think, as Mark Stein said that they're going to try and kill Trump. That's the only way they can stop him. The only way they can stop Donald Trump regaining the White House, I believe, is if he dies. Now, that's awful. But listen, he wouldn't be the first US president to meet a sticky end. Now, would he? Ask the next of kin of, John F. Kennedy. So, hi, Antonio. Good to see you, my friend, as well. Yeah. So I fear for Donald Trump, but obviously, there's more water to flow under the bridge. He will be able to appeal. Now, I don't know if we can bring this one up. Did anyone see the Manhattan Court of Appeal? So Trump's lawyers can now query the verdict if they want, which they will do, and they're gonna go to the Manhattan Court of Appeal. I think I put it out this morning. Yeah, it is there. So this is not the Supremes that I'm going to show a picture of in a second. It's the Manhattan all-female, all-ethnic Court of Appeal. These are the sisters that Donald Trump is going to have to rely upon to save him from the fate worse than death. So, what do you reckon then? Do you think he's got a good chance with it? I wonder, can we zoom in on these absolute the appellate court? Chris Davis, you're right. Yeah, there they go. Look at those. Look at those lovelies. And they're the people that Trump's lawyers are going. Honestly, you couldn't make it up, could you? You could not make this up. But anyway, that's who it's going to be. These ladies will have Trump's fate in their hands. So it's a predetermined. I mean, everything about this is predetermined. You know that, don't you? You know, this was set up. They're trying to get Trump at every conceivable angle, impeach him, corruption, everything. And none of it true, of course. We all know that none of it is true. This is an all-out assault on the democratic process by the Democrats. And I talked to you guys about my views on inversion because we live in a fallen world. We live in a world, where Satan calls the shots for the time being. So I expect inversion, so it seems logical to me that the Democrats would be the party that destroy democracy. And actually, yes, as Chris says, then they can now call Donald Trump a convicted felon. Oh, they've all been doing it. I mean, all the luminaries I've seen today, people like Stephen King, the author Stephen King, seen him, Barbara Streisand. I mean, all the great intellects. Oh my goodness! I mean, that's going to make such a difference. And the thing is, these people are so very, very stupid. They don't realize that they're celebrating the death of the U.S. justice system. Now, thankfully, folks, lots of people see this for what it is. Lots of people see this as really, I mean, I've seen some people putting out tweets like, RIP USA 1776 to 2024, because it's almost like the idea that you can get a fair trial, which lies at the heart of a democratic process. You need to be able to be assured you can get a fair trial. There's no chance Trump was going to get a fair trial. They set him up in New York, where, and one of the most uber liberal on steroids cities in the United States of America. That's why they wanted the trial. And by the way, did anyone see the DA? Did anyone see the absolute state of the DA? I think he's called Alvin Bragg, is he, or Alvin Briggs, something like that. He likes his burgers. I wonder if we can bring up a picture of the DA, a George Soros DA, by the way. Yeah, one of those Soros boys who, of course, brought this ridiculous case against Alvin Bragg. Chris, not to be confused with Alvin Stardust. That's an entirely different thing. Yes, Donny Girl, thank you. Alvin Bragg, yeah. I don't think he's got much to brag about, apart from the fact that he's evidently very good at eating burgers, lots of them, judging by the appearance of them. So they've got Here, there's an interesting there. I want, here's the sort of, I'm going to show you an image now of the sort of person. I wonder if we can play it actually. You might be able to hear it. This is the sort of person celebrating the verdict yesterday. This is the sort of individual who thinks that what we saw last evening was a good thing. Play. There you go. You belong in jail, Donald. I used to love you. Yeah, it's not listening to the sound's not coming through, but that's okay. You can look at the absolute state of that. You belong in jail, Donald. Yeah, no. I think she belongs, to be fair, or that's the wrong word, isn't it? He belongs in potentially, in a hospital setting, somewhere that he can get assistance with his issues. So anyway, that was some of the stuff that we saw. Grantonio says, "I love Alice Cooper." Yeah, well, that was indeed a sight to behold. But I mean, you've seen the whole, as you would expect, all the hyper partisan lefties are going, yeah. They're so, because Trump derangement syndrome is real. It's so real. That's why one reason I want him to win in November. I believe that he just triggers these people. He absolutely no, not Billy Bragg, indeed, Chris Davies. He triggers the lefties, and he even here. Now, I was pleased to see. Did any of you see that earlier today? Boris Johnson, Bojo, the man who betrayed Brexit, he came out with a pro-Trump. It's on my Twitter line, a pro-Trump headline as well. I mean, I think he actually sees it for what it is, a bit of gangsterism, basically, by the Democrats. A hit job on Donald Trump, as he put it. So I was pleased to see Boris say that. But by the same token, Boris is the same guy. I mean, here we go. Boris said, this was a machine gun mob style job in Trump. Right, hang on, folks. I'm just going to jump here. Hang on. I'm just speaking to our guest who is timing slightly out. To come. Hang on, folks. There we go. He says I can't multitask. So Gregory will be hopefully joining us very shortly. So Boris, a bit of a hypocrite. On the one hand, he's saying, "Oh, this is a mafia job, hit style job," and then on the other hand, he has said he doesn't like to visit New York because he's scared he might meet Donald Trump. Make of Boris what you will. But at least he had the common sense to recognize that this is very wrong. Thank you, Chris Davis. This is all, as you know, the huge team behind me is making sure that this is seamless and that it all flows so perfectly. So, I mean, if I was just to tell you there's just the two of us, then that mightn't be just quite so impressive. But we punch above our weight. So anyway, so there we go. We have the US turning into a banana republic. Lots of, I think, anger. The person who spoke, I think, thought the best about it, totally unambiguously, and I'm 100% with her, is Megyn Kelly. Now, Megyn Kelly did put out a short little video piece to camera, really, knocking it out of the park, sort of making it clear that what needs to happen now is we're going to come for them. And she's right. She's absolutely right. When Trump gets into the White House, assuming he does, there needs to be investigations into Hillary Clinton, Obama, Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all of them. You've got to give them. I'm with Megyn. I don't believe in all this nonsense about, we have to be more virtuous than them. They go low, we go high. No, we have to meet them. We need, you're never going to clear out the swamp. We know that. That's not realistic. But you can absolutely make the swamp suffer. So I really hope, and I'm sure he will, Donald Trump knows what they're doing to him. And I mean, I have to say, and yes, folks, I am critical of Donald Trump over Operation Warp Speed. I still will not accept that was the right thing that he did back then. But listen, he still has my admiration. And I still want to see him in the White House, and I still support a lot of things that he says. And, I mean, he seems to be pretty much anti-war. He seems to be just wanting to make America prosperous again. And all these things, I think, will happen. He's a counterbalance to globalism, I think. And so those are the things that I want to see with why I want to see him back in the White House. And those are the things that the Democrats fear. I mean, it's absolutely fear. Yes, Donny Girl, your comment is it's time to fight back. Yes, it's absolutely. And we fight back by taking no prisoners and no compromises. Chris says Joe Biden said no one is above the law. Oh, the irony. But actually, Chris Davies, this is the inversion. When Joe Biden, I mean, he said other things today as well, or last night, no one's above the law. He's talking about himself. He believes that he is above the law. The Democrats, everything they accuse Trump of doing, which he doesn't do, they do. That's the point. That is the absolute point. So yes, Donny Girl, Pandora's box is open. I think it should be game on. I want to see the whole American right and center unite around Donald Trump. I mean, Trump is doing very well in the polls. In the swing states, he's doing very well. I think the Democrats are desperate to get the first debate with Joe Biden under their belt, which I think I'm right in saying, I think that's going to be in hang on again, folks. More multitasking. It's going to be in. I don't even know. I think it's late July. Late July, I think it is. Yeah, I think our guest will be coming. So I'm going to wrap this up. So they want to get the debate with Trump because God knows what they'll pump Joe Biden with. Could you imagine the amount of adrenochrome he's going to need? Did I just say that? I didn't mean adrenochrome. I meant feel-good juice, whatever they put in him. I don't know. How do you animate a corpse? I'm not sure, but that seems to be what they do with Joe Biden. Anyway, look. It's a developing situation. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch this. I mean, I think Nigel Farage, to be fair to Nigel Farage, gets it right when he says that the global, midazolam, that's, well, if only, Jed, if only they filled Joe Biden with midazolam. I'm being told that in Scotland they use iron brew to reanimate the dead. I think in Ireland we could say Guinness is what we use to reanimate the dead or to speed people towards death, depending how much of it they drink. But either which way, we are we're living through very, very interesting times. And Nigel is right. The big game is happening in the States. What we're seeing in the UK, you see this general election stuff. Like, I know I like to talk about it a lot, and there's fun. Oh yeah. Listen, I have to say this before our guest will be joining us. Did anyone see LBC host Ian Dale's spectacular own goal that happened today? Did you see that? So for those of you who don't know, Ian Dale is a long-established presenter on the globalist LBC radio channel. He and I have spoken, I think, once or twice. They weren't nice conversations, and I don't really care for Ian that much. I don't wish him harm, but he did harm himself. So here's what happened. Here's what's happening. Here's you missed it. A couple of days ago, he announced, big news, I'm stepping down from LBC to throw my hat in the ring to become the prospective parliamentary candidate for the Conservatives in Tunbridge Wells. Tunbridge Wells. And Tunbridge Wells is quite a pro-conservative. I mean, it's got a Conservative MP. It's had Conservative MPs. But anyway, get this. So Ian stepped down and he reluctantly stepped away from his LBC host show. That was 2 days ago. So what happens today? Somebody uncovers a tape of Ian Dale saying, he hated Tunbridge Wells. He wouldn't want to live there, or words, I'm paraphrasing, but basically words to that effect. So the Conservatives have, I can see our guest in the background. That's fine, Gregory. I see you there. Get yourself comfortable. I'm talking for another minute or so. So Yeah, he basically, the constituency, the Conservatives have deselected him because he said he hated the constituency that he wanted to stand for. There's a serious point in this. It just shows you the nature of politics. That's why I have such problems with most politicians. That's why Donald Trump's such an unusual politician. They Was that you, David, that they found the clip? No, it wasn't me, John Saunderson. I have talked to Ian Dale. I've been on the show a couple of times. I didn't like it. I thought he's pretty weak. But anyway, his bid to become an MP blew up within 48 hours of him starting. So yes, Grantonio says all the Tories hate their constituents. All the politicians hate their constituents. This is the problem, right? I see our guest with a very fetching pair of glasses in the background here. He's been kind enough to come on. He's over in the United States of America. We're going to bring him in. Hopefully this is all going to work. So drum roll. Let's reintroduce. He was with us not that long ago. It's great to have him back. And of course, I'm talking about Gregory Paul Martin. Hi, Gregory. Oh. His volume's off. His mic is off. Let's unmute him. Hang on.
Wait. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Yeah. Good to see you, Greg. How's life in the USA?
Well, it's great, and thank you so much, ineffably, for your patience. I've just been traveling all the time. I mean, I've just got to New Orleans, and that's why I was. Anyway, have you been to New Orleans?
No, it's one part I haven't been. I should go to New Orleans.
Well, look, if you want to talk about black magic and the occult, which we're going to, I mean, this is the hotbed of it as far as America is concerned. But it's a fascinating place because the French Quarter, still has that feeling of being 18th century. And I came here because I'm seeing a friend of mine, but also because I've been writing a novel about a serial killer who actually, in the book, the serial killer is, I think, the greatest serial killer ever invented, because he's basically Bill Gates meets Elon Musk gone off overboard. I mean, even though more overboard than they have done in real life. So, and the first murder takes place here in a hotel. I just wanted to refresh my memory of what this hotel is like. So,
yeah, well, it's great. It's great you've taken the time out of your time to spend it with us. And we have actually, Greg, can I just ask you before we get into our own agenda, we'll talk about all the stuff we've read about. Obviously, in the last 24 hours in the States, the whole world is suddenly focused on New York jury finding Donald Trump guilty on all counts and likely to go to prison, potentially, if not be killed in prison. What's your take on it, Gregory?
Well, I wrote a book. I self-published a book about 3 years ago called "Watch It Come Down," which is my Twitter handle.
Yep.
Sorry, these guys are talking next to me. And the book is about the rebirth of America from the point of view of astrology, because people don't understand. And I'm sure for those of your listeners who don't know who I am, I'm a writer, actor, director, producer, and the elder son of the Beatles producer, Sir George Martin. But I'm also a master astrologer, and I married as a child. So it's something I've done privately until now. But the countries and corporations have charts. So there, in the chart of the United States of America, this process, this terrible destruction and rebirth, Phoenix rising from the ashes thing that it's going through, is inevitable. And the book focused largely on Trump. And I said that he would not make it. Frankly, somebody asked me the other day, who do I think was going to win the election? And I said, well, Trump will make it to the election. He won't make it to the election. He'll be financially destroyed by this. It's not just the criminal aspect of it. In his chart, he is financially destroyed. So now you got an election between Biden and Bobby Kennedy Jr.
I mean, I listened to another a much respected commentator, Mark Stein, the esteemed journalist who I've got a lot of time for, and he basically said that they're going to try and kill Trump, because I don't think, Greg, there's any way they can't beat him. But
yeah. Well, absolutely. But the other thing that's really, I think, very, very frightening, not for me, but for the people involved. I was with a man called Tony Lyons in New York the night before last. Now, Tony is the most courageous publisher in the world, in my opinion. He's the Skyhorse Publishing. He published the real Anthony Fauci. You know, he published Bobby
Mhm.
Kennedy's book on Fauci. He published Woody Allen's memoir. He publishes books that no one else will touch. And he's also the chief fundraiser for Bobby Kennedy's campaign. And he said to me, and he's a great man and a very smart man and a wonderful human being. And he said to me, you do realize that every single person in America who's opposed the military-industrial complex is dead on a public level. And so they're expecting the same thing, you see, for Bobby. So,
Yeah,
you know.
it's fascinating. Well, as you say, Gregory, let's start at the top of this one because we've got a packed agenda to go through with you.
Yeah.
So, and the first thing I wanted just to make everyone aware of is that, I mean, you mentioned astrology and you are a master astrologer. Maybe just give all our viewers and listeners, Gregory, just tell us exactly what that means because people will be interested in knowing.
Yeah, well, astrology is like anything else, an evolving art. And there are people who are mediocre at it, and there are people who are lousy at it, and there are people who are absolutely brilliant at it. I like anything else. It's the people who are brilliant at it. I like, a handful of people. And I just happened to be born with this gift at a very young age, as I was as a writer and actor, the same kind of gift. I'm very aware of it at 10. I mean, at 10 years old, I because my father was the Beatles producer, I did the chart. I read the chart of John Lennon for John Lennon in the Canteen Abbey Road studios. I'm writing a book about this because I'd never spoken about it. It's called Blackbird, and it deals with black magic, which has been a big part of my life. And I didn't know what I was. I was very nervous, obviously, and particularly because my father was very conservative and poo-pooed all this stuff. But of course, John and all the Beatles, it was the time when people were getting into the Eastern philosophy and the occult, and I kind of scared myself because I saw so clearly the huge mother issues, women issues in his psychology, in his chart, because astrology is psychology. And I could feel, though I didn't know what it was, certainly the arrival of the evil Yoko Ono, who is the ultimate witch. And so it started then, and I always kept it very private because, having developed a very successful career as an actor, writer, director, producer, I do it amongst my friends. Someone like Liam Neeson, I've known for years and years, would call me up and say, "Would you do the chart of, this person, my family," that kind of thing. And then when COVID hit, I decided it was one way I could help people because I saw how many people were panicking and the evil that was being thrust upon them. Because the fact of the matter is that you can see death in a chart. That's why I correctly predicted Charles having cancer a long time ago. And to repeat, he will be dead quicker than you think. And the whole royal family is going to be impacted by this. His son too. By the same token, Bill Gates has colon cancer. It's in the chart, and he'll be dead within 2 years, thank God. But so you can see everything. So what I was trying to do was help people, and by offering to read their charts and just reassure them. For example, a woman contacted me from Liverpool who she had lung cancer, and she was convinced she was going to die. She was asking me for hope. And when I looked at her chart, I immediately saw I started to laugh because I could immediately see that she's going to recover within months. And of course, she emailed me about 6 weeks later and said, "I have a clean bill of health." So you see, I was just trying to help them with the understanding of their destiny. But this is the most important thing, and this is crucial for anybody. We have to understand that mind is everything. We are the creators of our own reality, and we get what we concentrate on. That's the problem with people like David Icke, who only see this monumentally disastrous dark vision of the future. He's not offering any solution. He doesn't understand quantum physics, and astrology is quantum physics. We live in a multiverse. We choose the realities we are in according to the beliefs we hold, because the mind is the builder of the whole thing. So with regards to a chart, and I developed this incredible mind training I call it Total Power and Dominion, because it puts you in the place of Christ consciousness, which is total power and dominion, which is what this whole thing is about. The apocalypse, which we're in now, is the meaning of the apocalypse is the lifting of the veil. It is not the end of the world. It is the end of one world, which is why everything so dark is on the table with everything so light. But if you read the Bible correctly, and the book of Revelations being metaphor, symbolism, poetry, at the end of the end of the end times, is the return of the Christ Spirit, not the person, the spirit within us. And that means walking on water. You know what I mean? I mean, literally, that's why I call it total power and dominion. Because if you learn how to dominate your mind, to go back to astrology, And then any great astrologer, there aren't many of us, but any great astrologer can tell you when life is going to be difficult, why it's going to be difficult, what the purpose of the lesson is. If you then combine it with dominating your mind, the things that would destroy other people become like a walk in the park, because you see it's an illusion. Your mind is actually in the place of turtle bound dominion, what I call turtle. And by the same token, when you're going through what I'm going through right now, which is fantastic stuff, it's like a tsunami. That's why I've been so uncharacteristically erratic with you, because I've been trying to keep up with all this incredible success coming my way. So astrology, there is on the one hand, your destiny, yes, is absolutely fixed. The moment of death is fixed. Certain relationships are definitely karmic. You can see when someone will suffer, but there's always purpose in the suffering, and the point of it is to transcend the chart and become a master.
And okay, and also, folks, if you, I mean, as I say, Gregory is exceptional in this field. If you want to get a reading from Gregory, you can do that by, if you drop him an email, Greg, I think, here we go, harryhorse@gmail.com, and tell him you came from me. And
actually, David, it's actually harryhorse2024@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll amend and bring it back up again in a second. Yeah, so we make sure you get the right address, email, and then wing Gregory your if you're interested and you want to get a reading from him. So here we go, harryhorse2024@gmail.com. That's how fast we are, Greg.
The email, sorry, the website gregorypaulmartin.com will be up again Monday, and gregorypaulmartin.com will be up on Monday or Tuesday.
So listen, we got so much stuff to get through, Greg, and I don't know if we'll get through it all, but we'll do our best. And I'll tell you where I want to start, because you mentioned the Beatles, and I want to start on this one, because it's a conversation you and I had the other day, and I've subsequently listened to other people talk about this. Now, again, I think you and I are pretty much aligned in a lot of stuff, which makes these conversations easy. But the whole Beatles, the whole fake Paul, folks, I'm sure some of you may be aware of this conspiracy theory out there that says Paul McCartney died 1966 in a car crash in London, and that someone else, Billy Shears, whoever it was, Greg, was drafted in, and therefore that's the conspiracy theory. Now, I have to say, although I am very open-minded, I can't buy into that based on music. I don't see that. But can I ask you, when you hear this, because you, unlike 99% of the people on this planet, you actually know, you met the Beatles, you were there, Greg, you're very central. So what do you make of when you hear this kind of stuff, fake Paul and all that?
It is absolutely stark raving insane. It's shocking to me, actually. I mean, I didn't realize this subculture existed. And as you have said to me, David, conspiracies, many conspiracies are true. And if you go down the route of, investigating the phrase, where the etymology of the phrase conspiracy theory, it actually became a pejorative term after the Kennedy assassination, because that's when the CIA started mocking the idea that it could possibly be a conspiracy, which of course it was. Before that, the phrase conspiracy theory was actually taken very seriously, because conspiracies are part of history. Just go way back to the assassination of Julius Caesar. And many other instances. So many of them are true, but that doesn't mean, as you said, that they are also, and this one is just complete nonsense. And it stunned me to see so many people taking it, because it doesn't make sense at all. And when you examine of course it makes sense. And there's one guy, I don't know what his name is, but he's certainly a professional Beatles conspiracy theorist. It's his whole life, who I saw on a show called Truth Stream, and they invited me back on that show, but I'm not going on it now after I saw that interview. No way. It's my heritage. It's my heritage.
I know.
The whole thing was based upon this nonsense that somehow the Tavistock Institute had created the Beatles in the same way that Jeffrey Epstein had been created, to destroy the morals of Western society. How can you possibly say that about the Beatles music? It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There is the Tavistock Institute, and in fact, actually, I have heard even your dad I have heard, conspiracy theories that, his role in it and all of this. And you know what really annoys me, Greg,
Yeah.
ultimately is I look upon that musical pedigree, that brilliant pedigree that the Beatles put in place, number one, but subsequent stuff from McCartney. Now, I do see somebody saying here, the guy who wrote Eleanor Rigby would not have been the same person who wrote Wonderful Christmas Time. But no, Grantonio, it can be the same person, because I think if you're a musical genius, you can do anything. And I think McCartney is one. Would you not agree that, I think just on the music, Greg, just on the music alone, there's no argument. It's so far out there. I cannot accept it at all, in any regard, which is a pity, because it means then that people say, "Oh, you've now dropped out of one conspiracy theory." But no, I'll assess each one on their own merits.
Well, yeah, but all due respect to that comment that somebody just made, that's rather like saying that Freddie Mercury couldn't possibly be the same person. The Freddie Mercury who wrote Fat Bottom Girls couldn't be the same Freddie Mercury who wrote Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, Wonderful Christmas Time is actually a really good little Christmas tune. And nobody is prolific all the time. And by the way, Paul knows that he's lost it. I have a great story about that. It must be very painful, I think, for him to, because both Paul and Sting can't really write songs anymore. It does dribble away for some people. I'm sorry. What was your question?
No. My question was just the whole fake. I'm just interested in what your perspective of the fake Paul scenario is. But as I
just don't understand it. And the funny thing is, I mean, I just won't have anything to do with it. Nothing to do with it. It's just absolute nonsense. And anyone who has any degree of intelligence, and you believe me, there are many, many great celebrity artists in music and music, theater, film, television. Like I'm working with Nile Rodgers right now. I'm working with Bono on something. They just look at this and go like, "What is that?" I mean, it's just like it's absurd. And the really funny thing, the ironic thing, is that I am kind of uniquely placed to talk about this because not just because my father was the fifth Beatle. Not just because I spent my entire life weaving in and out of the Beatles' lives, not just because I've had dinner in Paul McCartney's, aka Billy Shear's living room, like a few years ago. It's also because the man who's apparently sort of like the messianic figure for this nonsense, a man called Tom Hugh Harriet, who wrote a book called The Memoirs of Billy Shears. I actually narrated that book, and I narrated the book because I thought, this is many years ago, he found out that I did a killer McCartney impersonation, which I do because I'm a very talented actor and I've lived with Paul for so long. And he asked me to narrate this book. And I said, "Well, what is the book?" And he said, "It's the memoirs. It's this whole thing about Billy Shears and the whole Paul is Dead thing." And I thought it was a comedy. I mean, I literally thought it was a satire. What else could it be to me? So I said, "Sure, I'll do it. If you pay me what I ask you to pay me." He didn't have a lot of money. He didn't pay me what I was worth. But I thought, well, what the hell? And I even got him a great deal at Mark Knopfler's studio in London, because Mark Knopfler has the original EMI desks. It's a very interesting recording studio. So I recorded it there. And it was only when I got to the end of the book. If you buy the audiobook, it's me being Billy Shears. I mean, aka Paul McCartney. And when I got to the end of the recording, I started to think, hang on a second, this guy probably actually believes it's true, because there was a list of names that was so difficult for any voiceover artist to pronounce. It was 3 pages long, bizarre names like Nebuchadnezzar and blah, blah, blah. And, it took so long to do. I said, "You've got to pay me another £1,000 for that. I can't, And then I started to, and so when I got to the end of it and he asked me to write an introduction, I said, "Okay, but I got to ask you this because, in all honesty, Tom, I went to this project thinking you were being funny and writing a satire on a ridiculous idea, but I have come to the feeling that you actually believe it. Am I right?" I said, "Absolutely, absolutely." So, and he said, so I said, "Well, all I could do was write a sort of like a tongue-in-cheek introduction, because I'd agreed to do that. But it's so it's a bizarre thing about it,
It is. Yeah, it is. Well, I'll tell you. So there's several things I want to try and get through with you if we can.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on the clock, but and if we need,
I'm fine. I've got as long as you want.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. One of the first thing I want to chat about is another friend of yours, actually, Kevin Spacey, because people will be aware of the fact that I think you did appear on another alternative media platform, and that resulted in you basically taking yourself off that. And Kevin Spacey, I think, folks, just so everyone's clear in this one, lots of media coverage about Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was found innocent on all charges, as far as I'm aware, wasn't he, Greg? And so, and you know Kevin Spacey, so I think you wanted to try and put the record straight as you see it as well. So talk to us about Kevin Spacey.
Well, one only has to look at the caliber of the artists who defended Kevin in his most recent trial. I'm talking about Judi Dench. I'm talking about Liam Neeson. I'm talking about Elton John, who was extraordinary in his how far he went. To realize, you'd have to be an idiot not to realize that he's not the person that's being portrayed. And this is a witch hunt. And it's a witch hunt, people trying to screw him for money. I've known Kevin since I was 24. We did our first play in New York together. He's the most wonderful. He has faults, like we all do. But at 24, we have more faults. Hopefully we grow, right? But and his faults, I think he's certainly learned through this experience. He's become much more humble than the Kevin that I knew. But he was always fun, always a great guy, and always had high moral principles. So this stuff is absolute bollocks. I'm having gone through a similar experience myself, because I was subject to a witch hunt in the British press in 1999. And it was when I thought about committing suicide 3 or 4 times, I can guarantee you it's gone through Kevin's mind several times. Because when's it going to end? Because now anybody can come up and say, oh, he did this and oh, he did that, and ask for that Channel 4 documentary. I mean, for goodness sake, it's revolting. And you have to be, again, a half-wit not to see through that. These are people jumping on a bandwagon trying to profit from a poor man, a great, great gifted actor being crucified for nothing, just for the malice of one person. And, when it happened to me in 1999, this is why I feel so much for Kevin. I hadn't been living in Britain for years, and I had no idea of what the British press, the gutter press were like, the red top papers. I mean, they are disgusting. I can remember being doorstepped by 12 journalists, because this thing all involved that idiot Tara Palmer Tompkinson. And, I didn't even know who she was when this all came down. But anyway, I remember being, 12 journalists following me down, Piccadilly, and, saying, yeah, who are you screwing tonight then, Greg? How's Tara, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped, and I got to know them by name, because they became so much a part of my life. And I said, Andy from The Sun, Andy, I've got a great idea for you, an angle for your story. What about if I introduce you to 12 women in America, ex-girlfriends of mine, who actually still love me and know I'm a fantastic guy? And he thought for me, he said, no, I wouldn't sell, mate. That's what this is all about. It's about selling newspapers. And for the people who are jumping on the bandwagon, it's about screwing a decent man. It's absolutely evil.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I mean, it goes without saying that the media, the mainstream media, the press in particular, is an abomination. I mean, it just is. And
can I jump in there for a second?
Well, you can. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just briefly. It's like John Oliver. I detest John Oliver. I mean, I didn't like him before I saw what he did to Dustin Hoffman. But you see, what Dustin, you probably don't know this because it was in America, but when Dustin was another fantastic artist, when he was accused of being, the similar thing that Kevin Spacey is supposed to be, and I was supposed to be in 1999, the scumbag, I was called the scumbag serial philandering pig of the millennium by one newspaper. He was actually on stage with Robert De Niro being interviewed supposedly about a film. And what John Oliver does is jump in, and he knows the cameras are turning, and brings up this whole sexual harassment thing. That is blatant opportunism, as did that guy, I can't remember, David somebody, who invited me on a show I thought to talk about deep and important spiritual things, and he starts going on at me about, but you know the truth about Kevin, you're right. I mean, that's why I walked off. This is not journalism. These people should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. I think the thing about it is, Gregory, when you know people like Kevin, and you obviously knew the Beatles and all of that there. I mean, that does put you in a very powerful and unique position. It's just a shame. Whoa, I think Greg's knocked himself off, but he's back on again. You're in a pretty good position to be able to speak definitively on the topic. So,
Well,
okay.
exactly.
So look, Kevin Spacey. Next one I want to get to you with is one of our shared. I actually wrote a short article on this today and over on my Substack. The very first conspiracy rabbit hole I ever went down, which is about 25 years ago, and you know, yes, you know what I'm going to say, was the issue of the Shakespearean authorship. And I didn't know it back then. This was about 1999. Round about then, I think, it's when I started to read stuff and analyze and figure out. I don't think there we go, my very first conspiracy theory. I stuck that up today. Go and check it out over on my Substack, folks. But Greg, the point about it is that it suddenly dawned on me back then, and I was so innocent, but we're all innocent at one point. And I just assumed that the narrative of the Stratford man, daddy daddy da, he wrote all these great plays. That's just the way it was. I remember visiting Stratford, seeing all the Shakespearean sites, and I went with it all, Greg. I thought this seems right. Yeah. And then I came to the recognition it's absolute garbage. There's not almost a scintilla of truth in any of it. So the greatest hoax, a literary hoax anyway, in the last 400 years plus is on this topic, because it wasn't the Stratford man, William Shakespeare, who wrote the works, was it? Who was it?
It was Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, who's become the number one candidate in this century.
Yep, that's right.
And the former, this last century too.
Yes, that's right, which makes us both Oxfordians, because we are very much in the Earl of Oxford's camp in this one. And Greg, I didn't realize that once you start to unpick the Shakespeare myth, it falls apart. The likelihood is he was illiterate. Well, that's a problem.
Oh no, completely.
Yeah. When he died, he left no books in his will. There was nothing there, and yet to be able to do the works, he would have needed massive resources, which he didn't have. So nothing about the actual narrative works, but everything about the de Vere. So tell me, how did you get into the de Vere position?
Well, I was exactly like you, so one must forgive oneself, because you're raised in a culture and you think that Shakespeare is this bald-headed, rather bland-looking grain dealer from Stratford-upon-Avon. Yeah. For me, being a classically trained actor, I went to RADA with Ray Fiennes and Alan Rickman and Juliet Stevenson. I was fortunate enough to play Hamlet at a very young age in front of 1,000 people. And, when you play that, well as doing other Shakespeare stuff, King Lear, etc., the Young Vic, and with Daniel Day-Lewis and Midsummer Night's Dream, blah, blah, blah. So when you play Hamlet, I mean, that play is actually, as I'm sure you know, basically de Vere's autobiography.
Yep.
If you're playing it correctly, the role takes you. You have to let the role take you. And I was contacted by a woman, founder of the Shakespeare Authorship Society in Los Angeles, and she invited me to some of the meetings. And I began to read, being a detective myself, I began to get into it. And it became immediately clear. I mean, like intuitively, as far as exactly the same way I could see Yoko Ono coming to John Lennon's life at the age of 10, I knew that it had to be him. There was no other possible person. And then I read, of course, the definitive book, Shakespeare Identified, which is, that man, that school teacher from Northumberland, Thomas Looney.
We've got to actually, I think we can bring it up, Greg. Let's just jump back into my Substack there, and which there's an image coming up. We'll just, this one here, I think, is the one that we're talking about. Here we go.
That's right.
Shakespeare. Yeah. I mean,
and of course, I also met many other of the authors, Charles Ogden.
Yes. Ogden,
I actually played de Vere in a play at the Pasadena Playhouse, which is really very, very interesting. And I haven't told you this, but I'm actually writing a one-man show about de Vere and the whole torment, the whole process brought him, which I'm going to be doing at the Edinburgh Festival next year. But I'll remind you about that close to the time, because I know that I am deeply connected to him. And I had a very extraordinary occult experience during that terrible time of the witch hunt against me in 1999, which is probably should be another show, because it's quite a long, involved story. But In a nutshell, I was, and this is destiny. I mean, this is how I knew about the reincarnational aspect of myself with De Vere and the old Shakespeare period. Obviously, if you have a facility for language, Shakespearean language, like I did, and a lot of actors do, you must have been around in that time. If it hadn't come so easily, that's a reincarnational thing. And in 1999, I met an extraordinary gentleman called Eddie Burks. And Eddie Burks, you can find videos of Eddie Burks on the internet. He was unfortunately became known as the ghost hunter, because as the chairman of the Royal Parapsychological Society, he was called in to the Queen's Bank in Trafalgar Square because they had a haunting. And this is all very secret. And he actually did his thing and released the trapped spirit. And the trapped spirit, he said, he was very clear to him when he did the release of the haunting, was a nobleman from Elizabethan England. And actually, he'd been executed on a spot near Trafalgar Square, near the bank, in 1584. And again, we're getting into really esoteric stuff, but poltergeists and ghosts are trapped spirits who've either committed suicide, been murdered, or died under extreme psychological torment. Like Anthony Bourdain is a great example. People like that, they trap themselves here. And I met Eddie just through an unusual chain of events. And I spent a week with him in his home in Lincolnshire. And he told me this whole story. And this is all related to De Vere, because you've got to remember, Elizabethan court society was incredibly small. It was like 500 people. That was it, the most. Everybody knew, was in everybody else's business, all the intrigue. Everybody wanted to be close to the Queen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And someone at the bank leaked a story to the Telegraph that Eddie Burks had been called in, the great ghost hunter, to release a ghost at the bank. And somehow they got hold of Eddie's notes about the gentleman who'd actually been beheaded in Trafalgar Square, who was the ghost. And it was quite detailed stuff about his robe of office, etc. And a man called Father Francis Farmer, who was one of the foremost experts on Elizabethan literature, who was actually a Catholic priest, contacted Eddie and said, even though ghosts are not accepted in my faith, I have to admit that having read your description of the gentleman who was beheaded, whom you supposedly released, I've identified him as Thomas Howard, the 4th Duke of Norfolk, who was beheaded in Trafalgar Square in the Ridolfi plot to dethrone Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots on the throne. And blow me down, when I was in Eddie's living room and he told me this story, he went off to make a cup of tea. I was looking at his books, and on the bookshelf was a book that the father had written called the Ridolfi Plot. And I thought to myself, well, Elizabethan England was so small. I wonder if Thomas Howard, the 4th Duke of Norfolk, must have known Edward de Vere. And I turned to the back of the book, and blow me down, there was 10 pages, all about how Edward de Vere, who was the cousin of Thomas Howard, had been so devastated by his cousin, by Elizabeth executing his cousin. He threatened to ruin. To ruin his own family and actually ruin Elizabeth. I mean, it was so that's a bizarre connection, and it went on into a much deeper thing, which I'll talk about some other time.
Yeah. I mean, the whole the whole Edward de Vere thing. I found, Gregory, as a younger person. Here's just this reference. If people want to check out the book, Shakespeare Identified, you can go and you can buy the Kindle version, you can buy the paperback or whatever. It's well worth reading. There, as Greg said, there's lots of other good books in this topic as well. I've spent 20 years in it, and you know, Gregory, when I was younger, I didn't find. I remember at school doing Shakespeare and stuff, and it didn't make any real connection to me. I was absolutely cold on the topic of Shakespeare.
Really?
It's only when I understood the life of de Vere, and then connected it to the works, that it becomes so real. It really has a realism. And you mentioned some of your, I mean, there's lots of people, actors who also share our view. We're not the only one.
You're talking about David Jacobi and so forth.
Yeah, Derek Jacobi. Yeah, I listed some of them actually. Again, if we can bring back my article, actually, I can just refresh my own memory. But I mean, the thing about it is, there's always been suspicions that things were not as we were told. And of course, once the veil is lifted, you realize that, oh yeah, if you just scroll down a second here, do we see who else did we have in this here? I listed some of them up. A primer. Hang on, just keep going. Here we go. Oh,
You've really written a lot.
yeah, I was being very clear. Keep going. Down there, Shakespeare, blah 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 blah. Yeah, here's some of the names: Sigmund Freud, Jeremy Irons, Gregory, Derek Jacobi. We've chatted about. Interestingly enough, Enoch Powell, apparently, Alexander Waugh, great, Michael York, another actor. So actually,
also Sigmund Freud, Orson Welles. I mean, many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a whole universe of us people who actually are heretics to the orthodoxy, but I think we're plugged into actually what did happen, because Edward de Vere was a truly remarkable Renaissance man. Incredible life. I mean, people should acquaint themselves with the history of Edward de Vere, and I just think that once you make that connection, the plays, the sonnets, everything makes sense.
Falls into place. Actually, David, I must say this, that particularly the sonnets, and, I know the sonnets were a very private document. They were de Vere's journal. And, if you go through that, and, it's so obvious what he's talking about. It's so obvious the Earl of Southampton was his son. It's so obvious he had an affair with Elizabeth, like so many other people did. And if you really dig deep, you can see the shame he felt and the torment he felt about not being able to own who he was.
Yeah. Now, I just want to deal with it. I see one of my great supporters here on the stream is saying, but Edward de Vere died in 1604, and many of the plays attributed to him were written after 1604. Well, I can answer that, but do you want to have a go at answering that, Gregory?
No, you answer.
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is that Antonio, you need to understand there's a difference between when a play is published and when a play is written. And certainly the stuff that I've done, I'm quite confident the fact that some of the plays were published after his death. So what? Doesn't mean he didn't write them. Doesn't mean that, the world was a very different place back then. It was also very political. Like you say, we had this whole thing with Elizabeth and whatnot. And this was a time when you could lose your head, literally, as you've talked about with Thomas Hart. So he circumnavigated the streams, the political streams.
Right.
And I think some of the occult streams as well.
Yes. I mean, look, and that's another thing. The link of astrology. I mean, the fingerprints of an expert astrologer, an expert occultist, occultist are all over the place. I mean, forget about Macbeth, which is patently about black magic, but The Tempest. When I played Edmund the Bastard in King Lear with James Boland of the Likely Lads back in the 80s, his opening monologue is a derision, a complete derision of astrology. He's attacking astrology because his brother is into astrology and eclipses and all that stuff. I mean, Shakespeare was fascinated by that stuff, and he was also obviously an intimate friend of John Dee, Elizabeth's astrologer and magician.
Exactly. Yep, that's right. Yeah. Again, this is thing that most people.
How could that be accessible to the man from Stratford?
I know a grain dealer. Who's who, as I said earlier, no evidence he could read or write, had no books, didn't travel. I mean, the other thing about de Vere, like a lot of noblemen at that time, as you know, Gregory, he did the European tour. He traveled extensively. Particularly, he seemed to really like Italy and whatnot, and that's obvious in some of the things in some of the plays. This other guy, he hadn't got beyond Southampton. He's not going to be able. No disrespect to Southampton, anybody watching Southampton, but do you know what I'm saying? Like de Vere was a well-traveled nobleman of a very high level, and he understood all the sort of stuff, Verona, all the sort of the intricate details, which you wouldn't have known, Gregory, had you not been. You had to go there.
Yes, and also, with regard to your former person's question about the 1604 date, we don't know he died in 1604. I don't believe he died in 1604. I mean, just like we don't know that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. I mean, and I don't believe he's dead either. That's a whole other subject. But in fact, because the Tempest, the Tempest is such an extraordinary play, and it's so different from any other play Shakespeare wrote. I mean, it is a completely different style. And there was a man who wrote a book about De Vere some years ago called, first name was Paul, I can't remember his last name, but he found out that De Vere had actually been banished to the Isle of Mercy, which is a god-awful place on the outskirts of Essex, banished after the accession of King James, and after the threat of Southampton being involved with Essex in taking over the throne. That had passed because he was considered to be such a danger, and he lived out his days there. And there's another person I know who deals with encryption, who's proven that within the sonnets there are actually cries of help from De Vere encoded into the sonnets, saying that I'm alone on mercy and I'm dying of syphilis, which is actually I believe that was the case too, because what syphilis does in its later stages to an artist is give the imagination becomes like you're on LSD, and that play is like you're on LSD. And I believe that Prospero is De Vere. He's the man on the island with the daughter and all that stuff. It's just it's an amazing thing. I mean, but as you said, the evidence is so obvious. And regarding the travel, I mean, all the stuff about the detail about Italy from right. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the thing about the people who go with the orthodoxy of the grain dealer, the William Shakespeare, which is the proper name. As I said, like it's remarkable, Gregory, that they got away with this literary hoax. I mean, that's about once you become aware, you think, how the hell did they get away with this?
Well, I tell you what, because nobody ever contested it, really, did they? I mean, until fairly recently. I mean, the last 200 years.
Yeah.
And it's a very romantic idea, isn't it, to have an impoverished peasant, grain dealer who suddenly was like sprung from, just like Pallas Athena sprung from the head of Zeus, wherever fully armed. I mean, look, it was this genius born, in Stratford, somehow got hitched up to a theatre troupe and came to London and suddenly started to write with the grace of the most beautiful human being that ever existed. I mean, it's very romantic, that stuff.
It is just totally untrue. That's the problem.
Of course.
But actually,
and now, of course, the reason now that people like you and I get attacked about this is because there's such a bloody industry about it. I mean, when the truth does come out, and as De Vere said many times, the truth will out. His motto was "Vero nihil verius," nothing true than truth. The truth will out. Stratford-upon-Avon will become a laughingstock. It'll be destroyed. I mean, apart from that, there's also the whole of academia.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I think that's the thing that's kept it going. The commercial vested interests. Yeah. I mean, the jamboree around the myth is so lucrative that no one wants that.
Years and years of scholarship and and it's also the strange thing that people don't like their icons destroyed. They like to discover their idols have feet of clay. I mean, it's that, isn't it, too?
Yeah, it's certainly, as I say, I do recommend everyone should go and pick up a couple of books on this if you're really interested, and because I do think it's like one of the Shakespeare thing. Shakespeare was a conspiracy theory, and it's been blown apart, and so unlike the fake Paul thing, this is one that I think it's got real teeth in it, and I'm a convinced Oxfordian. Some people talk about Francis Bacon. I know people talk about that. They were around at the same time. People talk about, was there a scriptorium, where perhaps was De Vere, were there other people around him helping? I'm sure there were, actually, because that would.
Yes, I'm sure there were too.
Yeah, but the point about it is, it's the greatest canon in of the written word, I believe, that there's ever been, and it annoys me that it's misattributed. That bother. It would be a bit like all the Beatles songs were attributed to Mick Jagger. That would be annoying.
Well, no, not even Mick Jagger. It's like Gary Glitter's more like
yeah, sort of thing. Well, actually, I tell you, well, back to the Beatles. We're gonna circle back because talking about like De Vere and the occult and the significance of that around Shakespeare. I want to chat to you about John Lennon and Yoko Ono, because obviously this is another great area of interest, and again one that you're uniquely probably positioned to be able to talk about. But we all kind of think we know what was going on there. John met Yoko, fell in love, left the wife, and they lived happily ever after till he was killed. That's the orthodoxy. Tell us what it actually is, Gregory.
Oh, I'd suggest everybody reads The Lives of John Lennon by Albert Goldman. Then they can see the other side of this farcical story. I mean, it is, you don't have to dig too deep to find out that Yoko was after a Beatle, and she went after Paul first and didn't get that. And then went after John, who, of course, was much more gullible and naive. And, there was black magic involved there. And, when I talk about Yoko being a witch, she wasn't a witch like my stepmother. My stepmother was Muhammad Ali. And Yoko's like a lightweight, flyweight. She was fascinated by the occult and fascinated by control until she still is to this day. So there was, and Cynthia Lennon talks about this in her book, A Twist of Lennon, which is a great book. Her story of her life with John. Weird things started showing up at their house, like a package that contained a blooded tampon with a nail through it, that kind of thing. That's black magic stuff. And Yoko was out to destroy that marriage. She was a homewrecker and get John, and then was out to destroy the Beatles because she basically wanted to. She was a leech. She wanted to live off. She still is. Wanted to live off John. I don't care what anybody says. So that's what that is all about. And one of the great. By the way, I haven't forgotten about getting May Pang on your show.
That'd be great.
When I go back to New York at the end of June, I'm going to see her. And she did produce this movie very recently called The Lost Weekend about her time with John. And I'm telling you for a fact that May Pang was the only woman that John ever truly loved. I mean, he thought, he deluded himself into believing he was in love with Yoko for a bit. And, you can do anything with black magic and specifically make someone feel like they're in love with you. That's exactly what Yoko did. But, she was nuts. Here's a great story, by the way, which I told somebody the other night. When the Beatles did Abbey Road, there were moments of real joy and bliss. And there was a moment when they were doing that great track Because with the beautiful harmonies, and they really were in harmony. And, John was so crazy. Absolutely out of his mind, that when Yoko had a miscarriage, he wanted her in the studio so much all the time that he had a bed delivered from Harrods so she could lie in bed in the studio while they're recording. How off-putting is that? Could you be creative around? And she had to wear a tiara, right? So the Beatles were very proprietary about their snacks. They're very down-to-earth people. Ringo had his nuts. George had his ginger snaps. John had his organic, whatever, micro, that stuff, that dreadful stuff, that mercury. So they all had their little things, and neither one could eat the other's snacks. So, and I was there when this happened, in the control room of Studio Number 2 at Abbey Road, where this control room looks down over the studio. And so Yoko was lying in bed down there. The Beatles were up with my father and Jeff Emmerich, the great Beatles engineer, listening to a playback of Because. And George Harrison suddenly turned to look out the window, and he said this: "That fucking bitch, she's eating my cookies," because she got out of bed and eaten one of his cookies. It's just a great story. But the May Pang story that is true, that is so amazing, is that when John wanted to leave Yoko, when he finally twigged in 1970, whatever it was, that this was not a good thing for him at all. And he went on his Lost Weekend. Yoko deliberately sicked May Pang, their assistant, on him and told May Pang that she should have an affair with John so she could keep tabs on him. Is this okay? Can I go on?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
So, but what she didn't figure is that John would actually fall in love with May, which he did. which obviously terrified and horrified Yoko, because then who was Yoko without John Lennon?
Hmm.
So, and they were Yoko and there's a famous story. Yoko and John saw a UFO over Manhattan, and that happened the weekend that they were back in New York, and they were about to buy. John was about to buy a house upstate for them both, a farm, and he said I think it was on a Friday night that he wanted to go back to the Dakota to get some things and just to sort of wrap it up with Yoko. And of course he did that, and he never came back. When he did come back, I think the next week, he wasn't even suddenly talking to May Pang. He had this. May says he had this strange bottle around his neck. She said, he asked him, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, something, a gift from Yoko." And he said, "Look, smell it." And he opened the bottle, and she said it smelled absolutely diabolical. And you see, that's a black magic thing. I
Hmm.
mean, you don't know about black magic, but believe me, I do, and I can tell you stories that like make your hair stand on end, and they're true.
If I had any, yeah.
Yeah. So she was, she worked him to get back, and because she was nothing without him, and that's why that book by Albert Goldman, which is so controversial and upset many, many people in Liverpool, my father included. Um, but Goldman nailed it.
Yeah, so you would say that Goldman, what I have read that book, Gregory. I've read
Yeah.
it. You would say that's pretty much on the mark.
Well, I think the problem with it was that it didn't pay enough attention, I think, to John's beauty and genius. It's like the movie The Doors. I mean, the Doors hated the movie The Doors because all that Oliver Stone focused on was the drunken, dark Jimbo of Jim Morrison.
Yeah,
I mean, I met Jim Morrison when I was a child, when I went to LA with my father and George Harrison. And, he was great with me. He was great with children. He was a calm, sweet, lovely man when he wasn't drinking. And
yeah,
same with John. I mean, that's a problem with Albert Goldman's book. It's too sensationalized. But I'll tell you the truth. It's true when he describes John like, watching pornography and alone in the Dakota. And it was really sad what happened at the end of his life. I mean, and you just have to look at photos of him. He'd become an emaciated shell of himself. And,
yeah.
yeah.
And yet, despite that, I mean, if I remember rightly, he'd sort of taken a break from music, and then he came back
Yeah.
with Double Fantasy.
Yeah.
Before Mark Chapman is the reputed
Yeah.
gunman who killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, did you, when you did his chart, did you see that his life would not last more than?
No, because I was only 10. I didn't know that. I knew basic stuff. I was only 10. I mean,
Yeah,
I certainly, and a lot of the thing about astrology is it is an interpretive art, and
yeah,
that's why I say many astrologers who call themselves astrologers, professional astrologers. I mean, I'm not really professional. My business is show business, but I do it with a great power and depth. It's my passion. Many of them couldn't find their ass in a well-lit room. I mean, I'm talking about people like Jonathan Cainer, right, who wrote for the Daily Mail, people like that. And certainly all these millennials, I mean, that's ridiculous. They think it's so silly. It's a very, very profound thing. So I couldn't see that in his chart, but later I could. And,
mm,
I just didn't want to talk about it. Well, who wants to talk
yeah.
about death?
Yeah. I got to say, I mean, I was a student back in the when he was killed, and I can still, for me, maybe it's a generation thing, Greg.
You
We'll
were
be
doing
wrapping
an
up.
interview. Thank you. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember whenever the news came through that John had been shot to death, it was one of the most. It was shocking. It was like a
Oh, yeah.
JFK. For I think
Yeah.
for this generation, it was really. I remember
Oh, yeah.
I was in the Students' Union. I can vividly remember it. And someone came in and said, "Oh, John Lennon's been shot," and there was like just a complete air
Yeah.
of total shock. And really, the next thing that compared to that was when Diana was killed, was
Yeah.
murdered, whatever. It's one of those, but it is one of those historic moments, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's just so fascinating. I see Grantonio says John Lennon's "Woman" was #1 on my birthday. Beautiful song. Yeah, I mean he did. He had an amazing musical heritage. Well, what did you think of Paul McCartney's response to the Lennon death?
Well, it was so unfair what the press did to Paul. I mean, he was recording with my father. My father made him come up and work with him that day just to get him out of the house. And, You know, all he meant was when he said it's a drag, he's referring to the press. You know, he wasn't. I
Yeah.
mean, he wasn't saying his death was a drag. And I'll say, you know, it's amazing the way people twist it. And I'll tell you what you know what my father said?
Mm.
He
Yep.
said he'll always be bigger than Paul now, won't he?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a very traumatic moment, and as you say, I mean, they do go back. They go back, obviously go back all the way. So I can only imagine what McCartney
Well,
was.
look, yeah, I mean, and again, this speak you bringing this up about how massive that was. And by the way, David Bowie was prior to his tragic death was going. I knew David very well. He was one of the most genuinely charming, kind, funny people you've ever met. Great human being, and he was going to be playing a role in this huge TV show I'm now doing with Niles Rogers called The Circus. And David told me that John's death, because he'd done those records, Fame and Gold, I think Fame, whatever, another one with John Lennon. I mean, he knew John very well. He said it changed him forever in terms of what he finally saw how dangerous life could be living on the streets of New York if you're a celebrity. It changed
Mm,
everybody, and
mm,
it was. This goes back to the whole, to me, honestly, despicable, disgusting, stupid conspiracy about the Beatles. I mean, John
mm,
Lennon. The idea is that
mm,
these lads weren't talented at all. They were a terrible band from Hamburg, and somebody else wrote their songs. And for goodness sake, John
mm.
Lennon was John Lennon from the cradle to the grave, as Paul is, and George was, and Ringo is. And John,
Yeah,
you know, that's why his death devastated people, because he was the most screwed up of the Beatles, most confused, and could be the nastiest. I mean, I got great stories, listening to him say things that, you can go, what the hell? But he was also an extraordinary man and a great writer. And how can you denigrate that idea by bringing up this ridiculous idea that the Beatles were puppets designed to destroy Western civilization?
yeah. No,
That's why the reaction, that's why to this day it is that. That's why you've got this Beatles stuff going on now.
yeah. I think the point is that these people were great artists. Let's just
Yeah.
music is a high form of art, and art evolved. I mean, people talk about the music's changed over between 60s, 70s, whatever,
Yeah.
and McCartney into the 80s. Well, it would do because that's what happens. Art
Right.
evolves. I mean, why is anyone? I don't know why people are surprised at that, Greg. And yes, people will take the music, the different styles. McCartney went on to adopt. I mean, he's very hugely talented because he could do different styles. But I don't see that as a problem. I think that's a mark
No.
of possibly
Yeah.
a genius. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know why some
Oh.
people get upset. Yeah.
Oh,
So
he was. Jeff Emmerich. By the way, a great book to read about the Beatles is the book by Jeff Emmerich, my father's right-hand man, who really should have been given co-producing credit on Sergeant Pepper, because he did. He did things that my father could not do on Sergeant Pepper, was never given the credit for it. Jeff, who's like my uncle. I mean, I've got great photos of me with Jeff. I mean, his book, Here, There, and Everywhere, is a fantastic book where he takes you inside the sessions. I mean, he was there the first recording session when he was 15 years old. And
right.
he
Yeah.
said to me once, I mean, a few years ago, just before he died, because he was also going to be a part of this show, The Circus, which you'll see on Netflix or Apple next year, folks. He said to me, I said to Paul when we were doing Band on the Run, I said, you are a genius, because he is a genius. I mean, that's why John Lennon famously quipped when he was asked at a press conference, do you think Ringo's the best drummer in the world? He famously quipped, he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
That's right. I remember.
I mean, his
Yeah.
skill and his, when you look at the range of songs he's written, I mean, we've got to go back to this gentleman saying, how could he be the same person who wrote Wonderful Christmas Time? Wonderful Christmas Time is a great song. Like Happy Christmas, War is Over is a great song. And,
Mm.
Paul went from that to like Helter Skelter to, Jet. I
Yeah.
mean, he's been all over the place.
He
He
has.
can do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, I think McCartney must be in his 80s. Would he be in
Yeah,
his? I
he's
think
82,
early.
I think.
Yeah, like at that point, I think the ship's
Awesome.
approaching the port. If you know what I mean. I think
Well,
I'm not sure
I
that
got
the.
a prediction to make about that, because I know his chart. You see, I think
Mhm.
Paul is going to have, unfortunately, is going to suffer from dementia.
Mm, mm.
But he'll probably want to die on stage. I mean, where else is he going to die?
Yeah, yeah. I think, as I say, Gregory, that these were incredible people, and
Yeah,
as made of some of those other names as well. And it is sort of sad that people just can't accept them, that they were just incredible people. That's it. The
that's
end.
it. That's it. What is it about that that makes it so hard to understand? And
I don't know.
they've taken my father's words, which were my father was 100% dead on the nail and honest. And by the way, the real reason they bonded was my father had the most incredible sense of humor. That's why he did the Goons records. That's why Peter Sellers,
Right.
my
The sellers.
godfather.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but he said, look, they couldn't give me a song. I mean, they were great. They had amazing charisma. You didn't want to leave the company, and they were great musicians. They could harmonize, but they couldn't write for toffee. And suddenly they blossomed because they went for it like a dog on a bone. That's how they did. They were determined to write their own material and not do how do you do it. But then
Mm.
this professional Beatles conspiracy theorist goes, well, how did that happen? They weren't writing songs, and suddenly they become this thing. Obviously, there's a team of songwriters in the Tavistock Institute writing. I mean, how disgusting!
Mm.
I was there in the studio when they were making up the lyrics and the tune to whatever song. They were doing it in the studio. So I know he's completely nuts. This guy, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Were you there? No.
Well, I think that's it, Gregory. Yeah, I think that's why you have this incredibly unique perspective, which I think it's as important to share it with as many people
And
as
it makes
possible.
me as mad as it makes you. It really does make me mad.
Yeah, I just say it is so stupid and so disrespectful, and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and, and at the end of the day, like the legacy of the music from the Beatles will last
Live.
for
Oh, no question. No question.
for forever, so Gregory, we're going to have to come to the end of the show because we've gone a
Sure.
little bit beyond our normal time.
Well, thank you for waiting for me again.
No, listen, no problem. We did about 30 minutes on Donald Trump because just thought we'll do that as a
Well,
warm up.
thank God Donald Trump got conviction. That's all I can say.
It actually
Saved my ass.
it gave me something to talk about for 30 minutes. Gregory, it's absolutely amazing for you to come on us. And again, just to bring up your contact details, so we just bring it back up here before we finish. So if you want to contact Gregory, drop an email, harryhorse2024@gmail.com. You can get him there. His website will be up and running hopefully
Monday,
and we'll put that as well. And
that is great. And that website is gregorypaulmartin.com.
Yes, take a note of that. GregoryPaulMartin.com. Check a note, and it'll be up there. Look, Gregory, thanks for taking time out of your schedule.
I love talking to you.
It's been a blast, and I do think it's really important. I mean, a lot of people on I consider myself, we're kind of in the there's
my book. Yeah.
Watch It Come Down: Human Consciousness, Astrology, and the Death and Rebirth of America. I mean, we didn't really get into that fully, but maybe that's something we can do at another time as well, Greg, because because this whole issue about countries of charts, not just individual humans and all that, I think that fascinates me as well. But I do appreciate your time out of your time visiting down in New Orleans to talk to our audience, who are also all around the world. I think we have one of our Hawaiian regulars was on the stream and stuff. So look, thanks, Greg, for being here. Enjoy the rest of your time over there. Yeah. Have a great time. And I think that's going to be it for us for tonight.
I haven't forgotten your granddaughter's chart, by the way.
That's okay. That's okay. Yep, I'm sure my daughter and my son-in-law would really appreciate that. Just to say, folks, that the live show, or one of the things, Gregory, we're doing is I'm hosting a live event in London on the 26th of July with two extremely well-known individuals. It's a big secret until Monday night, but an extremely famous footballer.
Oh, great.
Footballer, yes. Controversial. And also a pretty controversial political person / actor. Oh, yeah, it's all coming. It's all coming to London town, 26th of July. Do check it out Monday night. Do check me out next Wednesday night when we are going to talk about, Gregory, the conspiracy theory behind the Lusitania. There we go. We're going back in time to who are the people that behind all that? Quite interesting stuff as well. Certainly, we've got Mr. James Perloff coming on next Wednesday night to talk to us. So lots of stuff going on. Yes, mahalo, Donny girl. Is that Hawaiian for bye-bye?
That's Hawaiian. Yeah, that's saying.
Yeah. All I know to say in Hawaiian is Meli Kaliki Maka, which means Merry Christmas. There you go. Because I've been to Hawaii. And that's about the only language bit of Hawaiian. But Donegal, great to see you in the stream. Great to see all you guys. I hope I see your comments. I mean, look, that's why Gregory's such a great guest. It's totally unique, fascinating insights. And yes, Donegal, mahalo. And thanks, John. We will be back on Monday. And I'm sure Gregory will come back on the stream at a future time with us as well. And because there's lots more stuff we can chat about. That's it from Gregory, myself for tonight. Thank you so much for being here. See you Monday evening. Bye.
Thank you, David.